In this video, we're creating sprites in Unity. We're using just a square and a circle to create a simple little platformer scene. You can see my amazing work of art here, inspired by a pitfall. My guy is jumping to grab a rope across a water trap. Let's jump in and make some sprites in Unity. Let's open up Unity Hub and start ourselves a new project. Click on New. Choose the location. We're going to put it, well, I'm going to put mine in repos Unity 2D, and then I have a text 101 folder that I've created. Double click on that, select project, the name of the project name here, I am going to call Playing with Sprites. Okay, Playing with Sprites, and template, we'll select 2D and create project. Now, while Unity's loading up, that probably take around about 20 or 30 seconds, let me show you a quick slide on what is a sprite. So a sprite, according to the Unity documents, is a 2D graphic object obtained from a bitmap image. So here's our bitmap image. It's 8 by 8, 8 pixels by 8 pixels. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let me put on my pointer so it's nice and clear. Bouncy red. These pixels, or this bitmap here, this mapping of these individual bits, is when we put it in our scene is going to look like this. We won't have the lines on there. The lines are just there so I can show you where each of the bits is. It will look like that in the scene. Now this is only 8 by 8, so it looks very pixelated. That's why we talk about pixel art. It looks like you can see every little pixel, but if instead of being 8 by 8, if this image was, I don't know, maybe 512 by 512, then you wouldn't see those individual pixels and it would look more smooth, more of a realistic image. So sprites aren't necessarily pixelated. It's just that I've zoomed in a long way. That's why this is pixelated? Pixelated, I think is what I'm looking for there. And we can move, scale, rotate, and many other things with our sprite. So a sprite is an element of it's a game aspect, it's a game graphic that we can push around on our screen, jump and bounce and shoot and explode and all those kind of good things. So that is the core of a sprite, and the sprites are really the building block for our 2D games we're going to be working on. Okie dokie, we're in Unity here now. If your Unity doesn't look like this, then again, you can go to the top right layout, click on default, and it should have the default layout for you. What we'll do to start off with is look at the relationship between the hierarchy window, the scene window, the game window, and the project window with the assets directory within it, as well as the all-important inspector. So they're the main windows we're going to be looking at in here, and we're going to do that by adding a couple of sprites into our scene. First of all, within the scene here, I can scroll outwards with my mouse wheel to move backwards, or I can move forwards. I can also hold down Alt and right mouse button and move left and right. That will move in and out within my scene. The only thing in my scene, and my scene is the place that we build our world, where we build all the things that the player can see. The only thing that we have in there at the moment is this camera. If I click on the little camera icon there, then you can see over in the hierarchy, we have main camera selected. If your camera is hidden, maybe it's underneath the twiddle here. This is the name of our scene is sample scene at the moment. It's just the default name for it. We have one game object, and that's the main camera. Everything within the hierarchy is a game object. So we can have our camera is a game object, we can have light, have the player, have environment, have exploding barrels. All of these things are game objects. If we click on main camera, just click on it once, over here in the inspector, we get all of the information about the main camera. For now, we're not going to do very much. We will just do one little thing, which is you can see our background. If there's nothing else the camera can see, as you can see down here, this is the camera preview. This is what we actually see through the camera if we were to play the game. Another way to see what you can see through the camera if you play the game is to click on Game. This is the default. And then when we hit the play button, as we did a lot in the last section, we will run any of our code and we will be able to actually play our game. But for now, this is the starting state of game. Jump back over into scene here with our camera preview. If I was to click on the color selector here, maybe change this color, make it a bit brighter. Maybe I'll make it darker color, actually. Make it brighter. Okay, let's make it darker. That doesn't make sense, Rick, but let's make it a green. There we go. And then X out of that window. Now our camera preview is green. If I was to click on the game tab, our background is all green. So that's just one little change we made within the inspector here. So now we've changed the properties of the camera. These are all properties for our main camera here. Now let's add ourselves a couple of sprites. If we come down into the assets directory, right click anywhere in this space in here under assets, right click, scroll up to the top under create, you'll see over on the right of create, you'll see sprites. Within sprites, there's square, triangle, diamond, hexagon, circle, and polygon. We'll start with square. So left click on square and hit enter on your keyboard. That will create the square in our assets directory. Now, this doesn't currently live within our game. It's not anywhere in our scene, and it's not anywhere in our hierarchy. We can rectify that by grabbing this and dragging it either into our hierarchy or into our scene. It will do the same thing in terms of creating it as a game object. Let's drag it over into our hierarchy for now. Blink, and you'll see that it has now appeared. Square is now over here as a instantiated. We've created an instance. We've created one copy of square over here in our hierarchy. We could do that again. We could drag it again and create another copy, and do it again and create another copy. These are all copying the exact thing we have in our assets directory here, and it puts it into our scene and puts it into our hierarchy so we can see a list of all of our game objects. Now, you might not see it over here because they're all right on top of each other, but if we were to click on the second of these squares, square 1 here, and we have a mechanism for moving our sprites around, moving any game object in our scene. Up the top here, we have a hand tool, a move tool, rotate tool, scale tool, rect tool, and a tool that has more of a broad name that's not a such and such tool, but move, rotate, or scale selected objects tool. We'll call it a tool. You can also use the keyboard shortcuts of Q, W, E, R, and T. I'm going to use W, and you can see we have our handles here. We have our X handle, red is X in this instance, and green is Y. If I was to grab, so mouse over the red handle, left click, and move to the right, that will move our sprite that we'd selected on, square 1, move it to the right. I'm going to click on square 2, and move that to the left. We now have 3 squares within our scene. As we did with the camera, we can click on one of these game objects and change the color. So let's change the color of the first one to something else, maybe make it a yellow, whatever you like. The color doesn't matter, just playing around with it here at the moment. We don't just have to click on it through the hierarchy though, we can also click on it within the scene. So if I click on this game object, we can now see that it is selected. Change the color to dark red, why not? X out of that. And then if I was to click either in the hierarchy or in the scene on our third square and change the color of that to a bright blue maybe. Now we have 3 squares, three square boxes that are within our scene that are also within our hierarchy. So hopefully that's becoming really clear, the relationship between the game objects, these are game objects, are listed in our hierarchy and a scene within the scene. And part of the reason that we need to have them listed here is because if we scroll the camera way over here, maybe there's some other part of our game, we're like, hang on a minute, where was that square? Then we can find it within our list of game objects here. And a little tip, if you double click on one of your game objects, it will zoom your scene right in and focus on that object. We can scroll back out again a little bit with the mouse wheel or Alt right click and moving the mouse left and right as we did a moment ago. I'm going to create one more of these default sprites for our assets directory. So right click from our assets area, find create, onto sprites, and I will put in a circle. Now it's waiting for us to name it, just hit enter, that's fine. Now we have a circle. Again, we can drag that into our scene, and hey presto, we have a circle. One other main thing I'd like to show you in terms of manipulating our sprites here is when you click on any of your game objects that we now have in the scene, we'll take circle, you can change the position as we did, or the rotation or the scale. We've already been playing around with changing the position when we grab the handle. So if we hit W on the keyboard and move left and right, if you have a look at this number over here next to X on the X-axis, you can see as we move left, it's getting lower. As we move right, it's getting higher. So it's showing us in the inspector here under transform, the transform position of our circle is currently at 8.45X and 2.5, etc. on the Y. We can move up and down on the Y and that will change. The Z is going in and out of the screen. Now I'm going to show you something here. We're not going to play around a lot with 3D in this course. That's in our other course. We're focusing on the challenges and the benefits of 2D. But if you were to jump up here to the top, just underneath where our game tab is at the moment, you'll see a button 2D. If we click on that 2D, that toggles between 2D and 3D. Toggle it. So if it's not highlighted, we're currently in 3D, that allows us to see what's going on in 3D space. If I hold down Alt and use my right mouse button and move the mouse around, I can rotate around in the world and see what's going on. Similarly, I could just hold down the right mouse button and just look around from the position that I'm in, and I can move my position in the world by just holding down my middle mouse button and just moving around. So there's a little bit of control we can have, and I wanted to show you that these are all currently on the 0 Z-axis. So on the Z-axis, they're at the 0 level. If I was to move my circle, here's my circle here, if I was to move it in and out, you can see the Z-axis changing. But if I move it in and out, it's not going to change how I view it in 2D. If I click over here on game, you can see there's my where my dot is in the scene. You know what we'll do is we'll grab our window. So I'm bouncing around a little bit, but we'll grab our window here and move it next to our scene so we can see our scene and our game side by side. And I'm going to click up the top here on free aspect and change the camera's aspect ratio to one of these, 1024 by 768, just so it's locked in an aspect ratio. And also move our circle back onto the screen so we can see it. This is where our camera is looking from. And you can see it's an orthographic camera, means it's looking at everything straight. It's not showing any perspective. Where things are on this plane is where it's going to see it. So as we move our circle around left and right and up and down, we can see it positioned within our world there. If I do move it forward and back, it doesn't change because it's still being perceived by our 2D camera, our orthographic camera, in the same position on our X and Y coordinates. So this is where it's on the X and Y. If I move the X and Y up and down, you can see over here in the game, it's moving up and down. But if I move my Z axis here, in and out, it doesn't change. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that briefly, just so we've had a little bit of a look at the 2D versus 3D camera. We're going to spend most of our time clicked on our 2D button just here. So click on that to get back into 2D. The last thing, before I give you a challenge, and there is a challenge coming, is we can scale up our objects. I can scale on the X axis, I can scale on the Y axis to make it bigger on the screen. And the other way to scale is by clicking on our rect tool, and we have that selected by default at the moment. You can grab the arms on the side, or you can grab the nodes on the end, just to scale the object how you would like to scale it, like that, for example. Okay, so that's us, and then while we're in this tool, we can move it around, and you can see once we're outside of this line here, we'll be outside of where our game camera is rendering that object. So if I move it over here, it's off screen, and then doo-doo-doom, in it comes and off it goes. So the foundations of animation right there as well. Now, here's where I have a challenge for you. Create a platformer level, just like the little one you saw at the very, very start of this video. I was showing you the example of what I've created, is create your own platformer level. Just use the basic sprites, and it's a pretend level. So make a little platform, maybe make a little character if you want. That'd be cool. Nothing's going to move. It's just a snapshot. And note, this is just for fun. We won't be using this in our game. We won't be using it beyond this lecture. It's just for you to get used to Unity and share what you have with the community. Once you've created something, create a screenshot of that, take a screenshot, and we'll see what sort of interesting and wacky and cool things everyone can come up with. So that's the challenge. Pause the video and jump in and give that your best shot now. See you in a moment. This is my sped up recording of my work. I'm duplicating my squares. They're now rectangles, just moving them around, creating a rope here by a rectangle that's rotated, working on a little guy to be jumping over my water trap here. It's inspired by Pitfall, an old game, making the different elements of my character here and then highlighting them all, selecting them all, and rotating all of them in one go. That can rotate the whole character in one hit, making a sun, changing the color of the rope and the background of the camera, and that is it. And final note, you can see that our hierarchy's become a real big mess over here. Things aren't named properly, not organized very well. That's something that in the future we'll certainly spend a lot of time focusing on. But for now, we're just playing around, having a little bit of fun and getting our hands dirty with Unity. So great work in this video. I look forward to your shares of what you've come up with, and I will see you in the next video.